Well, as a small child, I was raised by my grandmother, and we lived in New Hill. She was born in 1902, and so she would always say, Karen, come on, let's go to Apex. We're going to go shopping for Christmas was one of my favorite times. And we would come downtown and we'd go shopping at the Five and Dime. And it was my favorite time of the year. It was so pretty in Apex. The lights are all up on the streets. We'd go to Mr. Bennett and buy me new shoes. And it was just a wonderful time. And I looked so forward to going. It was kind of like, in my mind, like going to New York shopping. So it was exciting. Well, I was casually talking to the former town clerk, Georgia Evangelist. She and I both worked at the town of Apex. And I was telling her back in 2010 that I wanted to have a family reunion and actually tell the story of our Matthews family. My mother was sick. I have 6 siblings, and we all ended up in different homes. So we lost our identity, who we are as a family. And I wanted to reconnect. I wanted to go back and look at our history, where we come from, strong roots, strong branches. And I wanted to tell the story of my great-grandfather, C.W. Matthews. And what is known as Waylon Matthews as well. And living with my grandmother, I was fortunate enough to hear all the stories about him. And when we would come downtown to Apex, she'd say, that's your great-grandfather's store. But really, it didn't register to me how important that was and what she was saying. All I really wanted to do was go to the Five and Dime and find a toy. So, but I'm out here today because it's standing in front of a store that my great-grandfather owned and built back in the 1880s. He built this store. And it's such an honor to be here to tell his story. And I would not have been able to do that if I had not just casually had a conversation with the former town clerk. And once I started telling her things that my grandmother had told me about our family, she was immediately interested. And she said, she started researching it, and she would call me and she said, Karen, I found something. And she dashed downstairs. I was working in the finance department and said, look what I found. It was like an Easter egg hunt, and it was so nice. She literally, because everything I had was just told to me, but she had to find the documentation, the hard, concrete evidence, and she did that. And I'm so thankful, and I just believe it comes from the time that I spent in prayer at my kitchen table before I was going to work, asking the Lord, please help me be able to just do this family reunion and tell my family story. And it has ended up, Georgia spent so much time, and I met people that I would normally never have crossed paths with, like Mr. Warren and Toby Holloman, Miss Ann Griebing, my cousin Annette Cox and her brother. I didn't know them. Her brother lived in California. He spent years researching the Matthews family. And she came to Mount Zion Church and stood up. She didn't know us. And she said, we've been researching the history, and we know we've got a great Uncle Waylon Matthews, but we do not know his family. And then my sister happened to be at church that day, and she came up, and that's how we met her. When she came into my life, she came in with a lot of documentation, copies of his wills, the deed to Mount Zion Baptist Church that it was in his possession, that was in his name, and everything. So it's just been a blessing. And all of this started because former town clerk Georgia Evangelist cared. Well, I really believe that the Matthews family, we're just interwoven in the fabric of Apex. My great-grandfather, Waylon Matthews, former town clerk Georgia was able to find that in the minutes on August the 4th, 1919, that the town of Apex hired him after a heavy rain and the downtown flooded to work the roads back and smooth the roads back out. His nephew, Herbert Matthews Sr., was an electrician for the town of Apex, and he worked for 22 years. He was the first person to receive an accommodation from the mayor and town council ever in the town of Apex in 1966. He had to retire due to an injury as he was installing a transformer on Hunter Street. I was hired by the town of Apex in 1990 when we had 5,000 people living here, and I've worked here for 30 years. I retired in 2019, and 3 months later I went to work at the Hadley Cultural Arts Center. I love Apex. And then my brother Wallace Matthews worked 7 years for the Public Works Department. We love Apex, it's in our DNA. Well, working at the Hadley Cultural Arts Center, I'm able to meet a lot of different people who have moved into the area. And I've loved the fact that Apex embraces everyone and everyone's culture, and it's inclusive. And that's what I enjoyed. I think that's what makes Apex Apex. And I want us to continue to just be a melting pot of people feeling good, know that you're respected, that we love you, we're glad that you're here, and you're welcome to our town, and you're one of us.